Have you ever really stopped to think about, that plain brown box that lands on your doorstep? Or even the milk carton in your fridge?
They seem so simple, don't
Exactly. So unremarkable. But behind them, there's this hidden global powerhouse.
mm,
Today, we're diving deep into that world, the global paper packaging market.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one.
Our mission here is really to pull out the most important bits, the key insights from your sources, and give you a clear picture of this crucial industry without, grounding you in data.
And it really is a powerhouse. When you look at the global scale, the numbers are, well, they're impressive. Back in 2021, global sales revenue for paper packaging was already at a $357 billion.
Wow.
But the projections, that's where it gets even more interesting. It's expected to jump to over $420 billion by 2025.
Okay.
And then climb further to an estimated, get this, nearly $587 billion by 2033.
That's quite a leap.
It is, and it's showing this really consistent compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, of over 4%. For anyone wondering, CAGR is basically the average growth each year over that period.
Right.
And this kind of sustained growth, it's not just a random spike. It really signals a significant global move towards more sustainable ways of doing things.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit. That jump, from 357 billion up to almost 587 billion.
Yeah.
That's more than just, more boxes, right? What does that huge global growth actually mean when we start looking at different parts of the world?
It means fundamentally that the market, both businesses and, importantly, consumers like you, are making a statement. It's not just some fringe green trend anymore. It reflects a real re-engineering of supply chains and also our habits as consumers, and it's happening globally. This upward trend shows strong, ongoing demand. People and industries are increasingly choosing sustainable options over, say, traditional plastics. It's like a real-world echo of this growing environmental awareness.
That really puts it into perspective. And when we talk about where this growth is really exploding, Asia Pacific comes up immediately, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just big, it's growing incredibly fast. What are the figures telling us about its dominant role?
Asia Pacific is, undeniably the high growth engine here. In 2021, the region pulled in over $161 billion in revenue. And that's forecast to shoot up to over $281 billion by 2033. Its average yearly growth, that CAGR we mentioned, is 4.7%. That's the highest of any region globally.
Wow.
And what's really interesting is looking at the key countries driving this. China, for example, was the leader in 2021 with over $43 billion.
Right.
And that's projected to hit over $77 billion by 2033. Almost double.
Huge numbers.
Huge. But India really stands out. Its growth is particularly striking.
How so?
Well, it started at nearly $19 billion back in 2021, but it's showing an incredible CAGR of 5.7%.
5.7.
That's the highest country-specific rate we're seeing today. It's projected to reach over $36 billion by 2033.
What's behind that, do you think?
A lot of it seems linked to the boom in e-commerce there, plus a rapidly growing middle class demanding more packaged goods. It's not just volume, it's the sheer speed of change in this massive market.
Makes sense.
And beyond those two giants, you've got other major players like Japan, South Korea, Australia, Singapore. They all add significantly. It shows a really widespread adoption across the region.
It's really something, seeing that kind of explosive growth, especially India. Okay, so Asia Pacific is clearly leading the charge. But what about the, let's say, established markets? North America, for instance, they've been big players for a while. What's their story looking like?
North America is definitely an established giant, yes. And its contribution is still very significant, very steady. In 2021, the region brought in over $84 billion.
Still massive.
Absolutely. And it's projected to grow to over $126 billion by 2033. The growth rate, the CAGR, is a bit lower, just under 3.5%. And within that, the United States is, as you'd probably guess, the dominant force. It accounts for, way over 2/3 of the regional market. Right. Canada and Mexico are also multi-billion-dollar markets there, both showing consistent, though maybe less dramatic, growth compared to Asia.
And then Europe, another major player, it seems to have a slightly higher growth rate than North America, actually, around 3.7%.
That's right, yeah.
Does that point to maybe different things happening there, like different regulations or consumer vibes?
That's a really good point, and yeah, it probably does. Europe's total revenue in 2021 was over $70 billion.
Okay.
And that's growing to over $108 billion by 2033, with that CAGR of 3.7% you mentioned. Germany is the clear leader there. Its market is expected to grow from nearly $14 billion to over $23 billion.
Impressive.
And the UK is also very significant, projected to grow from over $10 billion to over $17 billion. Then you have France, Italy, Spain, Sweden, quite a few substantial contributors. The key thing here is even though these are more, let's say, mature markets compared to Asia Pacific, their growth still adds up to a lot of value. It shows that paper packaging is still gaining ground even in these established economies. And yes, stricter environmental rules and maybe higher consumer awareness likely play a big part in that.
It's really interesting how the newer markets are adopting so quickly while the established ones just keep climbing steadily. Okay, let's look beyond these major blocks. What about somewhere like South America? What's happening there?
South America is showing some strong momentum too, actually. The market there was worth over $21 billion in 2021, and it's projected to grow to almost $36 billion by 2033. That's a pretty healthy CAGR of over 4.5%.
Not far off Asia Pacific's rate then.
Getting closer, yeah. Brazil leads the way there, making up more than a third of the region's market. But you also see substantial growth in Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Chile, reflecting, more industrialization and consumer demand kicking in.
And the Middle East. I saw some strong growth figures there, too.
Yeah, absolutely. The Middle East market started just over $11 billion in 2021. It's expected to hit nearly $20 billion by 2033. That's another strong CAGR, almost 4.5%.
Right.
Countries like Turkey, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, they're really driving that expansion. It seems linked to diversifying economies and, again, growing e-commerce infrastructure.
Okay, and finally, just to round out the picture, what about Africa?
Africa, yeah. It starts from a smaller base, nearly $9 billion in 2021, but it's also growing, expected to reach over $15 billion by 2033.
Okay.
South Africa's the biggest player there, responsible for over a third of the market, followed by Nigeria. The overall regional growth rate is a bit more moderate, around 3% average yearly growth. This reflects ongoing urbanization and better access to packaged goods, but Africa also faces some unique infrastructural hurdles compared to other regions.
Right.
The main thing to remember is that each of these regions, South America, the Middle East, Africa, they all have their own specific drivers and, challenges. Their growth paths might look different because of varying economies, consumer habits, rules, but they're all part of this bigger global shift.
Okay, so we've seen the numbers, we've mapped out where the growth is, but let's bring it back. What does this all really mean for us, for businesses? What's actually fueling this global surge? And what are the potential bumps in the road for this huge industry?
Right. It really boils down to a few key things. On the driving side, the big one is this global preference, which is just growing and growing, for sustainable, recyclable packaging.
You see it everywhere.
You really do. People are actively looking for eco-friendly options, and that pushes companies to change. Just think about how many, say, food items now come in paperboard instead of plastic, or toiletries moving away from plastic bottles. It's a direct response.
Definitely.
Then you absolutely cannot ignore the explosion of e-commerce.
Yes. The boxes.
Exactly. Think about the sheer volume of stuff being shipped right to your door now, instead of sitting on a store shelf. Every single one needs packaging protective, often light, and increasingly sustainable. That shift has created this, almost insatiable demand for things like corrugated cardboard. That's a massive logistical shift.
Sure.
And layered on top of that, you have just generally rising consumer awareness about environmental impact. People are more informed, more concerned. And finally, there's increasing pressure from governments, from organizations pushing for greener alternatives.
Regulation.
Yeah, lots of places are setting strict recycling targets or even banning single-use plastics. That basically forces industries to look seriously at materials like paper.
It really does make you think about how many packages showed up on your own doorstep last year, doesn't it? Each one is just a tiny part of this enormous changing market. But you mentioned bumps in the road. What are the main things holding it back, or at least causing challenges?
Yeah, it's not all just straightforward growth. There are definitely significant restraints. Supply chain volatility is a big one.
We've all felt that lately.
Exactly. It can disrupt the flow of raw materials like pulp and also the finished packaging products. That can mean price hikes for you or delays getting goods. A problem in pulp production somewhere can actually ripple out globally.
Right.
And linked to that is the fluctuation in raw material prices. the cost of virgin pulp or recycled paper can swing quite a bit. That directly impacts manufacturers' profits and can potentially push up the price of the final packaged goods you buy.
So a balancing act.
It's a constant balancing act, yes. Demand is strong, but meeting it consistently and affordably, that's the ongoing challenge.
It's fascinating how all these forces, the drivers, the restraints play out in the background of things we deal with every day. From the sustainable label on a product to maybe an unexpected shipping delay, it's all connected to this huge global industry. So as we wrap up this deep dive, the main takeaway seems really clear. There's this undeniable global shift happening towards paper packaging, driven mostly by sustainability concerns and that e-commerce boom we talked about. Asia Pacific is leading the growth charge, but the established markets are still putting up really significant steady numbers too.
Exactly. And understanding these trends, it's more than just looking at market figures, isn't it? It really shows us broader shifts in society and environmental attitudes. It reflects how entire industries are adapting because consumers are demanding more responsible ways of making and selling things. It genuinely shapes almost every product we touch.
So here's a final thought to maybe leave you with as we conclude this deep dive. What role could continuous innovation, maybe totally new, paper-based materials we haven't even seen yet, or perhaps unexpected shifts in how we consume things, like, say, a big move towards refillable containers? What role could those play in completely redefining the future of packaging, pushing it even beyond the path we've looked at today?
That's the really interesting question, isn't it? Where does it go next?
Definitely something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. We really encourage you to keep exploring this fascinating intersection of global markets, technology, and sustainability. Have you ever, really stopped to think about the packaging that comes with almost everything you buy? I mean, it's everywhere. In your fridge, piled up by the door, even the box for your new phone. You mostly just, toss it without a second thought. But it's actually this huge, complex world. It impacts, well, everything, the environment, how stuff gets shipped around the globe, even how we feel about a brand. So today, we're doing a deep dive into something that feels incredibly familiar, the global paper packaging market. Our goal here is to give you a real shortcut to understanding this surprisingly dynamic industry. We're using some great insights from cognitive market research, and hopefully by the end, you look at that next Amazon box a bit differently.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because it's really not just about plain old cardboard anymore. This market is incredibly important right now. It's sitting right at this crossroads of, well, changing consumer attitudes, smart business moves, and these massive global trends. It's a really fascinating space, constantly shifting.
Okay, let's really get into it then. What's actually driving this market forward? What are the big forces? Our sources point to some pretty clear momentum builders. First off, there's this huge wave of environmental awareness. And that's paired with a real push from regulators, too.
Right. You just can't ignore the growing feeling everywhere about plastic waste.
Exactly. Governments all over are putting bans, or at least restrictions, on single-use plastics, which naturally makes paper packaging look like a great, eco-friendly alternative.
But it's not just top-down mandates, is it?
No, definitely not. Consumers are really voting with their wallets here. More and more of us are deliberately picking things with biodegradable or recyclable packaging, especially for food, stuff we buy in stores, and let's be honest, basically everything that gets delivered. And speaking of deliveries, that brings us right to the second big driver, the massive e-commerce boom.
Yeah, that's undeniable.
The growth in online shopping, especially after the pandemic shifted things, has created this almost insatiable demand. People need packaging that's reliable, light, and also, importantly, cost-effective.
Think about it, all these paperboard boxes, the corrugated cartons, those padded paper mailers.
Yeah, they've basically become the sort of unsung heroes of e-commerce logistics, haven't they? They have to protect the goods, they offer space for branding.
And crucially, they tick that environmental box consumers are looking for.
Right. And the third driver we're seeing is all the innovation and customization happening. Paper packaging today isn't just your standard brown box.
Not at all. We're talking about some pretty cool advancements.
Exactly, like water-resistant coatings, layered paperboard that's much tougher, surfaces you can print really high-quality graphics on. These innovations are genuinely changing paper from, just a basic material into something quite premium. You see brands in cosmetics, luxury items, electronics.
Yeah.
They're using paper now, not just because it's sustainable.
They're using it for the design possibilities too, right?
Absolutely. For vibrant looks, for telling a brand story right there on the package.
What's really interesting here, I think, is how these drivers aren't working in isolation. They really feed off each other. The regulatory changes push consumer demand for greener options.
Hmm.
And then the huge scale of e-commerce forces the packaging industry to innovate to meet those needs technically. It creates this like self-reinforcing cycle of growth. It's quite dynamic.
So, okay, that's the wind in its sails. But what about the anchors? What are the real challenges, the restraints holding this market back, even with all that momentum?
Well, every market has its flip side.
True. One of the biggest ones seems to be the volatility around raw materials and the supply chain itself. I mean, this industry needs a lot of wood pulp and recycled fibers.
And the prices for those can swing quite a bit.
Yeah, you've got factors like rules around deforestation affecting timber supply, energy costs going up, maybe global shipping gets snarled up. All that can really hit manufacturers' profit margins and make supply feel, well, uncertain.
That's a big headache for planning, I imagine.
For sure. Then there's the issue of durability, especially when you compare it to plastic or metal. Paper's great for sustainability, we know that. But let's be realistic. It doesn't always hold up well.
Right, think about moisture or really heavy items or just rough handling during shipping.
Exactly. It reminds me of trying to carry, like, a big grocery load in a paper bag when it suddenly started raining.
Yeah.
Disaster. It just doesn't have that same resilience. And that limits where you can use it. Maybe not ideal for frozen foods or certain chemicals or heavy industrial parts where you absolutely need top-tier durability.
It's a trade-off, isn't it? Sustainability versus performance in some cases.
It is. And finally, there's the environmental footprint of making paper itself. Even though the end product is biodegradable, the manufacturing process uses a lot of water and energy.
That's often overlooked.
It is. And there's chemical processing involved, too. So in places where water is scarce or energy is expensive or problematic, that can be a real barrier. It might even complicate things for brands trying to get those green certifications.
So that really puts pressure on the manufacturers, doesn't it? How do you balance wanting to be sustainable, which the market wants, with the practical stuff like cost and making sure the packaging actually works? It seems like it almost forces them to innovate constantly, finding ways to make paper tougher, cheaper to produce, maybe using less water or energy. Are there specific areas where this balance is just, well, really difficult right now, where they're kind of stuck with less green options for the time being?
That's a really good point, and yeah, it's a constant tension.
Yeah.
You mentioned frozen foods earlier. That's a prime example. Finding paper-based solutions that can handle those super low temperatures, resist moisture completely, and guarantee food safety. That's a tough nut to crack. It absolutely drives the need for more research and development. Okay, let's shift gears now to the exciting stuff. What's coming next? What are the future trends shaping this market?
Oh, it's the fun part.
Definitely. One huge trend is the move towards a circular economy, and tied to that, using more recycled paper. You see big leading brands making these really public commitments, aiming for a 100% recyclable or compostable packaging.
Right, those targets really push the whole supply chain.
They do. It means using much more post-consumer waste, stuff that's already been used and recycled, and relying less on virgin pulp from trees. This obviously helps with sustainability, but it also really boosts a brand's image with consumers who care about this stuff.
And that's an increasing number of people.
Absolutely. Then we're seeing this rise of smart and functional packaging. This is where tech gets integrated right into the paper. Think about QR codes you can scan with your phone or NFC tags for tapping, even those thermochromic inks.
The ones that change color with temperature.
Yeah, exactly, like on some drink labels. They're embedding these things to help track products through the supply chain, prove they're authentic, or just engage with the consumer in new ways. Plus, we're seeing new functional coatings, things that make paper resist grease or moisture better, but critically, they remain recyclable. That's a big step.
That tackles some of the durability issues we talked about earlier.
It does, exactly.
Yeah.
And finally, there's a definite trend towards premiumization and using packaging for storytelling. You see this especially with high-end food, cosmetics, artisanal products. Companies are using minimalist designs or maybe a vintage look. Very eco-conscious aesthetics, all with paper packaging. They're using it to communicate their brand values, create an emotional connection.
So packaging isn't just about logistics anymore. It's moved way beyond that.
Way beyond. It's become a really powerful strategic tool for branding.
And if you link these trends back, you can really see how companies are finding clever ways around those limitations we discussed. They're actively working to make paper packaging not just the green choice, but actually a strategic one that adds value way beyond just protecting what's inside. It's about getting a competitive edge and connecting with customers.
Yeah, that makes sense. So wrapping things up, the global paper packaging market is clearly in this really interesting kind of transformative period. It's being pushed hard by sustainability demands, by constant innovation in what paper can do, and obviously by the sheer volume of e-commerce. But, to really reach its full potential, the industry has to keep tackling those challenges around toughness, cost, and the resources needed to make it in the first place.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Consider that next package that arrives at your door, probably in a simple paper box. It's actually a tiny part of this huge global shift. What do you imagine might come next? What new materials or maybe technologies will pop up to strike that perfect balance between, say, consumer convenience, company profits, and keeping the planet healthy? That's the billion-dollar question, really.
It is. It definitely makes you reconsider something as everyday as packaging, how it affects our lives, the choices we make. I mean, who knew the box your breakfast cereal came in had so much going on behind it? Hopefully this deep dive has given you a bit of a new perspective on something you might not have thought much about before.